Hi, my name is Andy Jones, and I co-wrote and co-directed The Adventure of Faustus Bidgood. It's a bizarre cult film.
Love, murder, mental illness, Newfoundland independence.
There's a sickness or darkness in there that's like a fish hook in your abdomen while you're laughing.
We were the very first feature film produced in Newfoundland.
And was the most insane style to make a film that you could imagine.
We had a lot of people who had never acted before. That's not necessarily a great idea.
People made movies in Hollywood. People didn't make movies in Newfoundland. Fasten your seatbelts and come along for the ride.
And that's all I can say, I think. I don't know. You know, when I went to university after high school, I kind of always wanted to be an actor and a comedian. A bunch of us started in 1972 with the Newfoundland Traveling Theatre Company, and the members of CODCO all met in that company that year. It was a great time. It really felt like we were looking at ourselves as Newfoundlanders in a fun and critical way.
I'm a Newfoundlander, no? I'm a Newfoundlander. Break it up, pieces. I'm a Newfoundlander.
We were not afraid to make fun of Newfoundland, and we were not afraid to make fun of everywhere else who made fun of Newfoundland.
Maybe we don't have some of the advantages that some of your richer provinces got. Alberta, Ontario, and the like.
We were very, very nationalistic about Newfoundland at the time. When we went to Canada, we were definitely looked down on and made fun of and considered to be stupid, and we really, really, really found that difficult.
Every part of his body which had offended the Lord burst into flames.
We did a lot of stuff about the church, and we did a lot of comedy about the church, actually.
The Joneses have been stalking the church for years. Their last short film was a parody of a TV nature show, a hunting safari for the island's most unusual form of wildlife, the elusive wild nun of Newfoundland. We
did feel abandoned, and duped by the church in some way, because, when they were talking out one side of their mouth about morality, and the other side of the mouth, they were doing quite atrocious things, some of them.
Members of the Newfoundland clergy, like Father James Hickey, have had their fill of Faustus's creators. And it's not funny as far as you're concerned?
Not funny to the people. It's not funny to me. It ceases to be funny when it becomes offensive.
Emotions ran high in provincial court this morning as Father Jim Hickey pleaded guilty to the 20 sexual offenses.
We were partially angry about it, but partially also wanting to get it out there so that it existed out in public. I think we just didn't think anything could ever be done about it. The church was so powerful.
There was some really interesting work being done, and it felt revolutionary, it felt rebellious.
The film community in the early 70s was just barely getting on the go. When there was an NFB production that was related to Newfoundland, the crew came from somewhere else and shot it. That was it, gone. Really, there was no independent film, and there was no place for an artist who had ideas about making film could actually go.
In the 70s, the arts community was really bustling. There were a lot of organizations created. For me, most importantly, was NIFCO, which the Newfoundland Independent Filmmakers Cooperative started in '75. And as a young 16-year-old, I became close friends with this interesting character, Mike Jones, who had been a Christian brother and had given up the religion to enter film. He was the president of the organization, and him and my brother kind of led it.
Mike and I just talked film a lot. So we talked about making movies in Newfoundland.
And all of a sudden, right out of the blue, Andy and Mike start talking about making a feature film, and that feature film became Faustus Bidgood.
I sat down in my kitchen, I think it may have been January 1st, 1977, and I started to work on the ideas for this one character. A part of that idea was that we would write a film where Newfoundland leaves Confederation and becomes a republic on its own. We thought, what would it be like to have somebody be in charge who has absolutely no ambition? We wanted to go against the grain in terms of it being a hero story, so we had invented an anti-hero who has emotional, and mental, spiritual difficulties, and this was Faustus Bidgood, and I played that character. We had script sessions like we would have sort of parties and ask all kinds of people over. People would give suggestions and tell stories, and it was like this very, very, very chaotic way of writing. And then eventually I would take the ideas and try to boil them down. No one knew anything. We didn't even know how to write a script. I had to find a copy of Citizen Kane and to see how you wrote it out on paper.
The script is generally around 120 pages for a feature film. This script gravitated between 200 and 300 pages, and it never really made any sense, but it was really interesting.
Frank, you should have seen the stripper out at the Friars Club once. You would have loved it.
Andy and I lived together, so I went through the whole goddamn thing of Faustus. Andy wanted to make this film that pretty well had almost everybody in Newfoundland in it.
It came to town like a whirlwind, swooping up all kinds of energy and enthusiasm, and it was fantastic.
Luckily, my brother was a filmmaker, so he always had that idea that inside all this chaos, there was a film. And he kept pushing me to pin it down and to stop, going out and to bring it down to something more, workable. It came to blows eventually. He just drove me to the point where one day I just punched him in the face. We had a hard time after that for a while, but we soon fixed it up.
Take a risk, take a chance, and you'll win it.
Well, the casting process was completely out of control. We would have, put an ad in the paper, if you want to be in the movie, come, to 77 Bond Street. We're having auditions, and we had a lot of people who had never acted before. And that's not necessarily a great idea, but mostly it worked for us. And then in the middle of this, of course, we had all of the CODCO members. We're all comedians who were kind of the core people of the movie, so we combined both, yeah.
It was a source of a lot of domestic discord with me and Andy, because I wanted a larger role. I was the person who in the fantasy was the girlfriend, and in the non-fantasy was someone who he had a crush on, who was inaccessible.
No one in this entire movie, except Mike, my brother Mike, who had worked as a second assistant cameraman on The Rowdy Man. No one had any experience that I know of.
Once the script was on the page, it was Mike that had to take the script off the page.
I really, really loved the collaboration that I had with my brother, Mike. He had such great ideas, and we really played off each other well. Like, I had lots of ideas about the acting and what should be in the scene, and he was, picturing it in his own mind as a piece of film, and he was thinking composition and all those things that I didn't know anything about, still don't know anything about.
Mike really knew what he was doing, and it was really serious, and Andy is pretty special to be around. There's a great energy that surrounds him.
We all had infinite energy because we were in our 20s, and we were very excited about what we were doing. We really felt like, wow, like we're real filmmakers. We were able to improvise on the day, make up new stuff, give people new lines. Everyone was up for that. So the morale was high. It was a very exciting time.
I was in Gander for the weekend.
What were you doing in Gander?
What wasn't I doing in Gander, my dear, is more to the point.
Oh my God, I was a baby. I didn't know anything. I just wanted a lot. I had a lot of ambition, like Faustus Bidgood, and know where to put it, not knowing what to do with it at all.
It was just like chaos, but organized chaos. You're just trying to get to the point where everybody, crew, actors, was there for that moment when action happens.
So we were doing all the jobs all the time. We were producing, directing, acting, setting up the cameras, and learning. Everyone was learning.
I certainly didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I was just along for the ride. I wanted the experience. I was kind of willing to do anything, but most importantly, I would work for free.
Of course, we had no money, so no one got paid. Everyone got paid a share in the movie. We had an elaborate system. You took the number of hours you worked that day. So if you were assistant cameraman, there was a union rate for that, and so you got that many shares. And then at the end, you have all the shares at the bottom, and then your number of shares on top of that, and that fraction became your ownership of the profits.
I think it says here that there's really no hope that this film is ever going to make a profit, but you might get some money out of it if we have some sales.
We actually did make that one sale, and so we wrote 400 checks. You know, some of them were for $3.25, and some were for, you know, $1.47.
I know what I got from it was just enough to buy a new stove for my house. It only took 12 or 15 years to get the money.
But I never felt exploited. Like, I wanted to work on film, and this was the greatest thing. And at the time, you know, the Faustus Bidgood experience seemed completely normal to me, and like, this is how films are made. In the scene where Brian Hennessy goes into the liquor store dressed up as a chicken, we didn't even tell the liquor store we were filming. We just like walked in with the Bolex with Brian and just shot it. And the guy who looks his head up and reacts to it, he had no idea what was going on and didn't even know that he was in the movie until it came out. It was like, that would be unheard of. But that happened all the time. It was only later in life, as I worked on other films and more kind of establishment kind of films, that I realized the Faustus Bidgood experiment was a one-of-a-kind deal that only could happen with Mike and Andy and would probably never happen again, and was the most insane style to make a film that you could imagine.
I sort of doubted we ever would finish it at various points. I thought, oh well, it'll just be fun to look at the rushes and have a few laughs. I started writing in 1977. We shot most of it in the summer of '78, and then we kind of ran out of steam and definitely ran out of money. We never had any money anyway. You know, so we did other things during that. We kind of let Faustus Bidgood just sit there for those years. And then we kind of like got ourselves together to really work hard to make sure it happened, and it got edited. So we were in Montreal in 1982 and trying to edit the movie. So we decided to go see John Catadotis, who was the head of production or something at National Film Board, head of the whole thing.
The National Film Board at the time had a big film processing lab. They had all the gear, they had everything.
His secretary said, "Oh no," she said, "he can't see you. He's busy." You know, like, and we said, "Well, we don't care. Like, it hasn't been today. Like, you know, can we get an appointment with him?" And she said, "No." She said, "He's got no free time." So we left the office, and Mike said to me, he said, "He's got to go to the bathroom, right?" I said, "Yeah." So we actually went and we stood outside the bathroom near his office at the National Film Board, and we waited for him to go to the bathroom, which he eventually did, of course. And on the way out, we grabbed him, told him our story, and convinced him to help us. So we got this little editing suite. They invested the time in it. And then, of course, there was this massive job of editing this 40 hours of film. So it was actually put in freezers and kept for years, some cases, before we even got to see the footage. So we didn't know if we actually got the shot or not. You know, so there could have been important scenes completely missing, but luckily none of them were. After a while, we cut it down. We started throwing out, so we definitely don't want this. Eventually, we saw a story that was winding through all this material. And then we realized in order to make that story work, we had to go back and shoot more stuff.
So it wasn't like a traditional film where you shoot for 30 or 40 days and then you finish the film. This was a film that shot for a couple of 100 days over a number of years.
One of the hazards of filming over 10 years is that cast members grew older with every scene. Some died, others were born, like Maisie Riley's daughter Claire. When the filming began, Maisie was pregnant with Claire during this scene.
They usually hang people for treason.
7 years later, the daughter in her womb had landed a part of her own as a guest in his birthday party for young Faustus.
It was always a bit of a joke, right? Oh, that'll never get done. Yeah.
I didn't think, oh, it's never going to be done or anything like that. I just thought, wow, this is taking way too long and I'm not in it enough. These were my two thoughts.
So it could have sat there. It could have maybe never, and it would have just been a bit fun to look at. But luckily, Mike had that vision.
You know, there's great stories, wonderful stories of Mike sleeping in the room with the Steenbeck, sleeping on the floor, sleeping on the couch at NIFCO. This was his passion. This was his baby.
So he ended up shooting again in 83 and 84, and a little bit in 85, I think, also. And then, so Mike took all that stuff and painstakingly edited that together all those years. And finally, by 1986, which was 9 years after I sat down first to write, we premiered the movie in St. John's.
Hope you like the film.
You know, we were just so happy to have it done and to see that it looked really interesting and really different. There's nothing like it in the world.
When I saw it for the first time with an audience, people were roaring, laughing, and hooting and everything else.
I was home and I saw it at the premiere. What a celebration. The opus was done. Everybody was talking about Faustus, and everybody had, you know, constantly people say, so how's Faustus going? When are we going to see Faustus? And then this was the miracle of the completion of Faustus, and then launching it out into the world. I think there was incredible pride that this was ours. In whatever way you had participated, this collectively was ours.
Well, last night Here and Now sent a movie reviewer to attend the premiere of The Adventure of Faustus Bidgood. That reviewer is Gordon Jones, and he's in the studio with me now. Gordon, why don't you tell the people what you thought of this movie?
In those days, you were scared to death of the critics. They said really bad things about you, and they would say they could keep people away. And sure enough, when Faustus Bidgood came out, man, we got some bad reviews.
The film is disjointed and repetitive in structure. And despite its craziness, it's not very funny because in most respects it's heavy-handed and self-indulgent.
Yeah, that Gordon Jones review, man, I mean, God rest his soul, he's since died, but he went out of his way almost to do that review on TV, which he didn't, no one else ever did it before or since, I don't think. So that was harsh.
Sound levels are variable throughout, and sound quality is often abominable.
It was especially hard for Mike, and he was angry about that, and I think he felt that, you know, they were, to some extent, ignorant of the medium.
I'd say he wasn't surprised by it, and it didn't hold him back. Like, he was quite fine saying, this is what the establishment thinks of the show, and you should come see it.
Well, I still think people should have a look at it, if only to satisfy their curiosity.
Oh, it may be fine in the province. I don't think it'll fly much beyond the borders.
We went to see Faustus in Nova Scotia, and it got a great, I think we got a standing ovation. People were just blown away by it. They loved it.
I think I first saw Faustus Bidgood when it was touring the country in the late 1980s, and I was living in Winnipeg, and this thing rolled into town. But I remember it blowing my mind, leaving me puzzled as to what the hell was going on.
You know, it's a complex film. It's not a formulaic, you know, there isn't any rubber booting in it. It's not a rowdy man.
In markets that had a thriving art house community that enjoyed watching film art, it did very well.
And I'm constantly surprised by the young crowd who seem to have cottoned on to it now. Because for a while there, it had gone into, you know, nobody remembered it really. And it was done, and it had its big explosive opening, and then it kind of went silent. And now it seems to be, you know, making a return.
Yep, I've had lots of people say great things to me. I was downtown walking, and a young woman stopped me and said, oh my God, you were from that movie, you made that movie, and she's just in her 20s, and she just loved it.
It's not simply an important Newfoundland film, which it is, but it is also a very important Canadian film in terms of our film history from that period.
In the 1970s, the Canadian film industry, feature filmmaking, was really just getting established. In the early 1970s, we have a film like Going Down the Road, which is the iconic Canadian film. And that set the template for the assumption of what Canadian film should be, that it should be realist, that it should look, you know, kind of like a documentary. The Adventure of Faustus Bidgood is really one of a kind, and it is unlike anything else going on in filmmaking in Canada in the 1970s, certainly.
And it did take a long time for people to kind of come around and say, oh my God, this is really interesting, it's really different, it's ahead of its time, it's bizarre. It's a cult classic, I'd say.
It was extraordinary because you thought, wow, okay, they could do it, I can do it. If they can do it, why can't I do it? It opened that door. Like, people made movies in Hollywood. People didn't make movies in Newfoundland, right?
Well, we always say that we were the very first feature film ever produced in Newfoundland. So Gordon Pinson beat us to it with The Rowdy Man, but it wasn't produced in Newfoundland. And of course, The Viking beat everything in Canada, but it was produced outside of Newfoundland, so it's quibbling, but yeah, we were the first ever feature film. I think to some extent, the big influence that Faustus Bidgood had was we finished it, we did it. We actually made it happen. It can be done here.
It was the start of the film industry that we know today. Start right there, Faustus.
Newfoundland hasn't been dragged into a movie like this. A film hasn't been made where everything in the movie is us, is our political system, is our way of thinking about things. Is, it's just the foolishness that we have as a crowd.
So you're kind of hoping this may launch you off of the rock to some extent?
Well, just for a little while, just a few trips. That's all. Not. I don't want to get away from here. Where else is there to go, really?
I'd say that Mike was the godfather of our film movement in the province here, and quite a godfather he was.
I have used this film in Canadian cinema classes. Faustus Bidgood needs to be understood as one of a kind, as this distinct work of the imagination that comes out of Newfoundland in the 1970s and into the 80s, but it represents this energy, this spirit of independence and defiance. You think we can't make a film here? Well, we'll show you. Not only will we make it, but it'll be a film that will blow your mind because you won't have a category to put it in. And that in itself is worth knowing about and worth preserving.
Fasten your seatbelts and come along for the ride. And it'll take you to interesting places that you would not have thought of yourself. And I mean, that's what you want a film to do. You want a film to take you somewhere that you can't go on your own.
I think we did something about Newfoundland and about the politics of Newfoundland, the education system of Newfoundland, and just the sense of humor of Newfoundland. It's in that movie in a way that I don't think any of those things are captured anywhere else quite. This is me talking about my own movie now, but I think that's true.